Must have something to eat. Two seats in there.
I've only got one.
Good job.
Yeah, I know. No, what you said.
Welcome to the Sydney Jewish Museum. My name is Rona Tranby and I am a trustee of the Rona Tranby Trust. May I invite you to turn off your mobile phones and other important electronic devices. I understand that a few of our guests may have to leave early and they have asked to be excused if they cause an interruption as a result of that. We begin with the traditional protocol and acknowledgement of country, and I invite Darryl French, a proud Gamilarrian man from Moree, northwest New South Wales, to deliver the acknowledgement.
On behalf of Tranby Aboriginal College, the Aboriginal community, Friends of Tranby, staff, and I'd like to pay my respects and acknowledge the being on the traditional country of the Eora Nation and of the Gadigal clan, and pay respects to elders past and present. Thank you.
I also acknowledge with respect the elders and traditional owners of the land that we are gathered on the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. May I welcome the Honourable Victor Dominello, MP, who will address you shortly. And a very special welcome to the Honourable Linda Burney, who launched our last project in this very museum. And an even more special welcome to the Honourable Walt Secord, MLC, who 20 years ago, as a journalist with the Australian Jewish News, actually covered the launch of the Rona Tranby Trust. Welcome to the three of you. Welcome indeed. Now we have here many more people that I should recognise, but forgive me if I don't mention you all by name, because the evening will just drag on. So I'm taking the opportunity for all those wonderful people that are here. I'm not going to name drop. Now, in our program, Donnell Enoch was due to perform. That's the change in the program. He can't perform. But we have a very special act for you now. The Janawawi Dance Theatre. Now, Peter, who's the mum, and she's the artistic director, who runs about 50 dancers, has actually brought two of her children who are Gapi and Doi Unipingu. And they're going to perform the welcome dance, sung in Sydney language and sung by Matthew Doyle. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, Gapi and Doi. Thank you very much. I trust those who joined the tour of the museum found it of great value. May I thank George Fisher, who conducted the tour, and can I use this occasion to thank Norman Seligman and the staff of the Sydney Jewish Museum for their support and extraordinary assistance in allowing us to once again present the Rona Tranby Award in this fantastic venue. Let me also thank Yair Miller, President of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, for their contribution to this event. The New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies is the roof body of the New South Wales Jewish community, and it includes representatives from 61 cultural, educational, welfare and religious Jewish organisations. We are proud that they are our partners in presenting the Rona Tranby Awards. When Tom and Eva Rona died in tragic circumstances, Tom's will posed an interesting dilemma for the trustees. There was a provision in Tom's will that funds could be allocated either to the Aboriginal Legal Services or Tranby College. When I wrote to the Aboriginal Legal Services to inquire how they would use those funds, they wrote back to say they would use the money to fund an Indigenous person to travel to the United Nations. Tranby said they would use the money to discharge a mortgage on a kindergarten. Now, while these two proposals had significant merit, we decided to work on a concept that took into account that the Ronas were Holocaust survivors and committed social justice activists. I wrote to each organisation with a skeleton proposal of recording oral history. Kevin Cook responded. He came to see me with Kevin Torrey, who's here tonight. Indeed, so are the children of Eva Rona, and we acknowledge and are very grateful that they are here. That's Helen, Pauline and Sam. But over many years, over many meetings, Cookie and Kevin Torrey and I tried to conceive this concept of the Rona Tranby Awards. We knew that we were starting a process that required us to earn the trust and respect of the Indigenous communities. This was not the white man or the white community telling the Aboriginal community what it should do. Cookie and I developed a shared understanding that the Jewish community, using its expertise in recording the oral history of Holocaust survivors, could assist members of the Aboriginal communities in recording the oral history of their elders. It was an ambitious project. It had not been done before. Two communities working together in recording and preserving the oral history that they both respected and treasured. And Cookie hoped that we could encourage others to support this project. Indeed, the 20th anniversary gives us the opportunity to say to the community, come and join us on this journey. Set up foundations, create scholarships, give grants. Better still, donate to the Rona Tranby Trust. We need your help to realise our vision and your ongoing support to continue delivering the funding and human resources for future projects. And Jenny Simons, who is one of our trustees and who represents the Jewish Board of Deputies, who's been interested in and inspired by Indigenous Australians and who has played a heroic part in organising today's function. Jenny is now going to talk to you about some of the projects that we have done over the 20 years. Jenny Simons.
I acknowledge with respect the elders and traditional owners of the land where we are gathered, the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. In preparing for this event, we have been able to contact and speak to Rona Tranby Award recipients or members of their family and others who have worked with them for each of the 11 awards given over the last 20 years, almost 40 people, and many are here tonight. I would like to give with a broad brushstroke an overview of these 11 awards. Many award recipients use the award to travel out to country to do the recordings. This experience created the foundation for their project, and those involved spoke about the powerful and transformative experience of that trip out to country. Some of the interviews were done in the city, which underneath all the concrete also creates a strong connection to country. Some of the recording projects have developed into books, and one of the projects, the Yarrabah Brass Band Story, became a museum exhibition and a play that ran for 4 years. Not all the projects result in something published, and for some recipients the most important benefit of the award was the process of doing the recordings and making the links with country, with the past and with other community members. Some awards are completed in a few months, others a few years, and some are still going. Those who haven't completed your project should take heart from our first award for Liza Kennedy and the Kiwon Mob, which has had a 20-year life so far. It has gone through many stages, twists and turns, and our guest speaker Deb Evans will speak to you about that project. Some projects centred around one person, others around a group in a community. Lucy Porter from the Older Women's Network was inspired to interview well-known Aboriginal women in Sydney and guided a whole team to interview 15 women and publish the book Steppin' Out and Speakin' Up. I would also like to acknowledge other award recipients here tonight. Uncle Max Dulamunmun Harrison, Auntie Beryl Carmichael, who is here. No, unfortunately her daughter Julie couldn't make it, but I'm sure she's here in spirit. But she's here with her co-worker Jenny Kerr, and I'm not sure if Albert Williams has made it tonight, but he was planning to come, hasn't made it. Sadly, 2 of our award recipients have passed away, 2 exceptional women, Aboriginal elders who loved and fought for their communities and who had a wide-ranging influence on Australian society, Auntie Isabel Flick and Auntie Sylvia Scott. We are honoured to have members of their families here with us tonight. Kevin Cook, Director of Tranby when the Trust was set up and an award recipient in 1998, is too unwell to be here. We have been in contact with him and he has been advising us for the event and wishes us well for the night, and he will be looking at the photos and video from tonight with great interest, I'm sure. Other award recipients not here tonight who have wished us well for our 20th anniversary are Elder Kath Mills from Darwin and Francis Good from the Northern Territory Archives Service. Thank you all so much for coming tonight and making this such a special occasion. I would also like to acknowledge and thank all the people who have worked hard to organise this event. Kate Munro at Tranby College, Edel Nathan and Vic Aladef at the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, Lauren Kavanagh, Margaret Gutman and Rigo Ibarra at the Sydney Jewish Museum, and Vivian Zeltzer from the Music and Opera Singers Trust, who has been administering the Rona Tranby Trust since it was established 20 years ago and is invaluable for her support and knowledge. A very big thank you to David Taratzis, designer and techno-whiz from ING Design, and his assistant Lucas Jones. Without David's contribution, this event could not have happened. After sifting through the archives and all the conversations with past award recipients and their families and colleagues in preparation for tonight, I feel that I have become one of the keepers of the Rona Tranby Trust story. The themes of the story are valuing Australia's Indigenous oral history, connecting to country, and building relationships within communities and between communities. It is this story that we want to share with you tonight.
Thank you, Jenny. Now, Daryl French, who so eloquently provided an acknowledgement of country, is currently Program Manager for Aboriginal Programs and a lecturer in Aboriginal Studies and Community Development at Tranby College. Daryl is a tireless worker for his Indigenous communities. Can I ask you to please welcome Daryl, who will talk about Tranby College. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Jewish community for giving me this honour to speak on behalf of Tranby. I too would like to acknowledge once again the traditional owners of the country we stand on tonight, the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation, and pay respects once again to our elders past and present. This is a snapshot of Tranby Aboriginal College, and it started with a person by the name of George Allen, who was an influential solicitor and Wesleyan Methodist who became Mayor of Sydney, who bought the Toxis estate and built Toxis Park in 1831. It was a grand mansion for his family. He cleared bush land to make gardens, orchards, stone chapel and huts for his servants. The place known as Toxis Park is now St Scholastics College. Allen's daughter married a prominent Sydney architect by the name of George Allen Mansfield, and they lived in a sandstone cottage on the Toxis estate, which is now known as Tranby. The exact date of the building is not known. It had a timber fence and was surrounded by bush to Glebe Road. Tranby's 4 rooms in the 1850s were a bedroom, parlour, dining room and a lounge room, each with a fireplace. The rear sandstone walls, now the interpretive wall, once formed the servants' room, later a lecture room and warden's room, then a teacher's office and photocopy room. The Glebe area is the home of the Gadigal ancestors, and the original terrain was full of eucalypt, figs, geebungs, yams and burrawong nuts, while Blackwattle Bay provided plenty of seafood such as fish and rock oysters. Governor Phillip named the area Glebe and gave it to his chaplain, Reverend Richard Johnson, to clear farmland in the 1830s. The Gadigal bushland was divided in this part of Glebe, which came to Toxis estate. A guy by the name of Reverend William Binnington Boyce, who bought Tranby in 1887, built extra rooms and a bathroom in 1910 for his family. This addition is the present kitchen wing. Boyce was a Yorkshire man and was most likely who renamed Toxis estate as Tranby, which is a place in the Old Beverley area where he grew up. The Tranby was also a Yorkshire ship bringing the first Methodist group settlers to Western Australia. Tranby is a Norwegian word meaning village of cranes. In 1957, the Reverend John Hope of Christchurch St Lawrence pledged Tranby to the Reverend Alf Clint, the founder of the Cooperative for Aboriginal Limited. Hope and the other trustees had purchased the cottage from the Allen family in 1946 and used it as the hostel for the students from Sydney University. But he also said, "Tell Alf he can have Tranby," was Hope's response when he heard that Alf Clint was looking for somewhere to establish a training centre for the development of the cooperative practices for Aboriginal people. Today, Tranby College is an independent, Aboriginal-run adult education centre with participants from all over Australia. Kevin Cook was an important figure in the early days of the development of Tranby College and shaping it to what it is today. Kevin was the General Secretary of Tranby Aboriginal College and the first elected chairperson of the New South Wales Aboriginal Lands Council. In the mid-70s, Kevin used the political and organisational skills owned in the trade union movement of effectively campaigning for the introduction of what became the first ever Land Rights Act in New South Wales. Newswalk was formed in 1977 out of the Black Defence Group, which never stopped campaigning for recognition of our dispossession. Kevin never sought personal recognition for his pivotal role in the struggle through the 70s and beyond. And also to mention just a few, because there's just too many to mention, was the contribution of people like Auntie Isabel Flick and also Joe McGuinness. Minamara, one of our buildings, was purchased by the cooperative in 1987. It was built in 1882 at the same time as a number of other houses in Mansfield Street. The name is etched in the glass cornice above the front door. It is likely derived from the Illawarra region. A wonderful event happened in 1998, which is called the Building Out the Back. In September 1998, 40 years after the establishment of Tranby, Tranby inaugurated the new building, the Building Out the Back, which was a major development. The buildings were a joint design between architect Cracknell and Lonigan, and Tranby. Together they created a site which reflects the nature of the college as an Aboriginal learning place to all Indigenous communities. The old complex was designed in sympathy with both the Victorian feel of the suburb and an holistic approach to Aboriginal education. The round learning areas were built to reflect the Indigenous learning circle practices. The outside is central to the design. It links the old and the new, the European heritage and the Aboriginal living heritage. The square and the circle signifies that. There is a bridge from the old section, the courtyard, to the new building that symbolises interaction and reconciliation between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. Our graduations and special events like NAIDOC Open Days are held in the amphitheatre of Tranby Aboriginal College. And Tranby at present are running 4 major programs: the Diploma of National Indigenous Legal Advocacy, Diploma of Aboriginal Studies, Diploma of Business Governance, and the Diploma of Community Development. Tranby also provides fee for service to community and other organisations, as well as venue eye to the government and non-government organisations, which brings in much needed funds. These courses have been developed in conjunction with Indigenous elders and community members in response to community needs and aspirations. The focus of the courses available is to consolidate skills, knowledge, expertise and enhance the abilities of community organisations and individuals to determine their directions. Tranby prides itself on its informal and friendly atmosphere, while aiming to achieve the highest standard of educational outcomes for our students. Featuring unique, culturally appropriate architecture and surroundings, tailored teaching, communication and assessment methods, Tranby's learning environment nurtures the needs of individuals and the community. As we begin our 50 years of operation, we remain committed to the principles that have forged Tranby into the iconic institution it is today. To provide high-quality education to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people right across the country, and to provide a strong social and political voice in issues that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. In closing, I believe that it is appropriate to inform people that Tranby is an important icon for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and it holds a special place for the journey of our people back into education. I have nothing but great admiration for my people who take on the challenge to improve their skills across many disciplines, which reflects the system's lack of commitment to the education process for our people. Some of our people who are returning to Tranby to get an education have been absent from education for over 20 years, and this in itself must pose a daunting experience for them. If we didn't have a place like Tranby College, it would be a great tragedy, not only for our people, but for society in general. And we as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have so much to offer. And like one of our wonderful political activists, Mr. Bill Ferguson said, we don't want charity, we want justice. And that justice is about having the same equal access and opportunity to an education that will enable us to participate in a process that allows us to compete and be a relevant and accepted part of our society. And an important issue that Bob Morgan, our Executive Director, said, that there's another wonderful political activist by the name of William Cooper, who took a petition to the German Chancellor about the persecution of the Jewish people. And I believe this is an important part of our partnership and our friendships, and I hope it lasts for another 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Darryl. Now, Mariah College has a wonderful touring band, and they have a Mariah College clarinet ensemble that's part of that band. They're going to perform to you tonight a couple of items that they intend to perform with the band when they go on tour to Israel and the United States at the end of November. So a warm welcome to Nell Cohen, Annabelle Finkelstein, David Lewis, Aaron Meyer, Gabriel Moldovan, Marcus Rose, and Michael Seif. And let me invite Nell and Annabelle to speak about each item that the band is going to perform tonight.
Good evening. We're the Mariah College Clarinet Ensemble. We will be playing two pieces for you tonight. Our first piece is called Klezmer Memories, and it is by Michael Kibbe.
This is a bit of what the composer said about the piece. Klezmer Memories was inspired by the sounds and traditions of European Jewish folk music. It is the third work I've written in the style, the other two also having been composed for clarinets. This seems an appropriate choice of instrumentation, as the clarinet has often been said to represent the soul of the Jewish people. Although all the melodic materials are original, the rhythms, dance styles, and harmonic language derive from traditional forms of music making, as were found in the villages of Eastern Europe.
Skies was composed by the Jewish-American composer Irving Berling. It was later arranged by a local Sydney musician, Richard Percival, for a clarinet ensemble. We are very honoured to be part of the 20th anniversary Rona Tranby Trust. We hope you enjoy our performance.
Thanks, guys. That was terrific. Absolutely terrific. It's a great band. One of my daughters went to America with the very first band. It's terrific. All parents should go with them. It's great. Now, in the showbiz style, let's hear it for some of the recipients of the Rona Tranby Award. That's what I'd like to do now. I'd like to introduce you to 3 of the recipients of Rona Tranby Awards. The Debbie Evans from the Kiwong Mob, Lorraine McGee-Sipple, the Older Women's Network Project, and Elverina Johnson, the Yarrabah Brass Band Project. Say that 6 times, go on. Anyway, one at a time. Let's get Debbie Evans first.
You did really well. Wow, well thank you. I'm not really sure how I ended up with this job, and I'll be speaking to my mob back in the far western New South Wales region when I get out there next Wednesday. I'd like to acknowledge this fantastic Eora Nation and acknowledge the Gadigal people and pay my respects to Elders both past and present and extend that respect to all of you here today. Sydney really is a beautiful city. It's just absolutely stunning, and I love that I can come to such a big foreign place and still feel this really strong sense of connection and still feel I can still feel old grandfather Jimmy Kiwong that we got to connect with through this project while I'm standing here talking to you, and it's absolutely beautiful. We did have a little experience in the cab coming over here tonight, and we of course got lost coming to the city, you know, bushies driving to the city, and so we got lost, you know, and had a bit of a journey, but then we thought, okay, well we'll cab it down here, and we got in the cab. And the cabbie said, no, look, you know, you're 5, you know, it's just down here on the corner, you're really, really close, so get out and walk, you know. And so we went to get out and thought he was kicking us out, but he still made us pay $5. But then when we walked around the corner, we realised we thought we were very clear that we wanted the Jewish Museum, and when we ran around the corner, it was the Australian Museum, and we said... We thought we were really clear, and then we started to reflect on what that might mean. And I think Linda Burney might remember a night when we were here in Sydney, and one of our elders from Redfern couldn't get a cab because it was night, you know, and she was too black to catch a cab. So we have no idea what the cabbie's story was, except we think we got kicked out of the cab because we asked to come to you guys. So let's hope not. So Yamagata, which is a Nyampa word that we didn't actually know before we started this long project that is actually still going. One of the things that this project has done, it's connected a whole lot of us exiled blackfellas from far western New South Wales who didn't know a lot about who our fathers. I have, my matrilineal country is Murruwinji, and we grew up with really close connections to my grandmother's country. So that was pretty easy, but we just knew that our dad was from around Ivanhoe, and, you know, we didn't know much else about that. But through this Rona Tranby Trust, the trust funded our camps back out to country. It's a story particularly focused around Auntie Eliza Kennedy, a very, very funny Nyampa woman who tells wicked, horrendous stories, and that cracking good sense of humour that has meant that we've been able to survive, you know, like the Jewish community, we've been able to survive some of the most amazing atrocities because of that, our ability to laugh. When we got back to go back out into country, it was really interesting because initially it was just all the old people's stories, but when we got to go back to country, we got to see how beautiful our country was. And people started to say, the younger generation started to say things like, this reminds me of. And so one of our non-Indigenous friends, who I think it's really important when you work on these projects that we are supported by a whole lot of people with a whole lot of skills. So I absolutely don't subscribe to that, you know, it needs to be just Indigenous business, because I think that for this project, our non-Indigenous friends have been the people who've been hanging in there, keeping it going along. And Karen Donaldson is the oral historian who's been pumping this along, and Jennifer's had many, many conversations with Karen and a whole lot of us, and Peter Thompson is an archaeologist by trade. And they have been incredibly instrumental in keeping this project moving along. The ability of the old people to be able to laugh and tell stories. We didn't know anything about our non-Indigenous families. And I had a guy once who said to me, are you going to talk about your non-Indigenous self? And I rang Karen in Wilcannia and I said, Karen, I've just been asked this question. And she said, well, you don't really have one. And through this story, we got to learn every one of the old people had a photo of old grandfather Dave Harris, who was an Irishman, on their wall. And they all talked so respectfully. Yes, I have no hope at all. Blackfella and Irish, you know. And they just spoke about this man with such incredible honour. And one of the photos in the book that we are in the process of publishing, when we get some money to publish it, is of Auntie Liza holding this photo of this old Irishman, and she said he stopped all the kids out there getting taken away. He taught them how to grow market veggies. She talks about ration clothes and all those things that were pretty awful. And she said he was the one that also, not only he married his Nyumpa wife, which in that day and age was pretty unusual, but when her sister's husband deserted the sister and left the sister with 9 kids, out in the middle of sort of Ivanhoe Kobo, you imagine it would have been pretty amazing. He also looked after those kids. So we got to know about our non-Indigenous selves as well. So, we've also been able to track where he came from in Ireland and a whole lot of other stuff. So I actually am so grateful to the Rona Tranby Trust that we know so much more about who we are. And it's meant so much to my father as he gets older and older, just knowing who he is and where he comes from, what we are as a person. Why does the Rona Tranby Trust matter? Why does the work of the Trust matter? It matters because it matters to the next generation of young people. This is the work that can help connect and orientate young people, and for young people to know what it means to be good individuals and what it means to be a good citizen of the world. So I've worked in Aboriginal education for many years, like Linda and Daryl and a whole lot of people in this room, and I haven't worked on anything more important than this work. This work is critical. The stories of the old people, young people knowing who they are, where they come from, because if we don't give it to them, they replace it with something else, and they usually replace that with popular culture. So, we all know that's often about disrespecting women and drugs and all sorts of things. So these stories matter because they're Australian stories, they're Indigenous Australian stories, the language matters, the culture matters, the history matters, the heritage matters. It not only matters to us as Indigenous Australians, but it matters to all Australians. So I think that, if we can continue the work of the Trust, it has made an incredible difference in my life. I know it's made an incredible difference. We won't even be going to count up the number of people that we've lost throughout this project. We all know that our communities out bush, really struggle. I think the life expectancy rate in Wilcannia is something like, has it gone up to about 34, Victor? It's still pretty horrendous. So, this work is just incredibly important. The work of the Trust is incredibly important. So I just, thank you so much, Jennifer, because what you've done for my family and for my daughters and my extended family and my father, and there are just so many people out there in the bush, those lovely red dirt roads that, get in your ball bearings and you get bowled when it rains and all those things that you just love about the outback. These are incredible stories that are just so rich and so important. And celebrating the strength and resilience of the old people is really important. They survived far more than I could ever survive. So it's really important. The oral histories really matter, because when young people come up against tough times, they have to be able to think back, and they have to be able to anchor back to something. And if they can anchor back to the stories of the old people, then they realise that they haven't actually got it too bad. So I'd just like to say thank you, and I'm really honoured to be here tonight. And on behalf of the editorial team that conned me to come here tonight, they are truly, truly grateful, and this project has meant so much to so many people. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me up the back there? Yeah. I'd like to congratulate the Rona Tranby Trust on their 20th anniversary, and also Di Rich, Headlow oral historian, and to thank the Rona Tranby Trust, the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, the Jewish Museum, Jenny Simons, and to all behind the scenes who have made this night possible. I'd like also to acknowledge the Gadigal people on the Eora Nation, on whose land we're meeting here tonight. Pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. The sharing of stories in whatever form is what connects us. It's how we learn about different people, cultures and communities, by learning from each other. Everyone in this room has a story, and every one of those stories is as important and as unique as the other. For 38 years I didn't know what my story was until I met my Aboriginal mother for the first time in 1981. 30 years ago this month, my 30th anniversary of identifying as Aboriginal. And that's what Stepping Out and Speaking Up is about. It's a collection of diverse women's stories, 15 in all, and the valuable work they do for their families, their communities, week in and week out, mostly unwaged. That's why oral histories are so important and need to be recorded so that women like these are recognised, acknowledged, applauded and supported. Stepping Out and Speaking Up gave me the opportunity and courage to share my story with a wider audience. Thanks to the Rona Tranby Awards for funding, and to Pat Zinn and Lucy Porter from the Older Women's Network Aboriginal Support Circle for recording my words. And this process with Pat Zinn has cemented our friendship. I would like now to share excerpts of that story with you in poetry. For Hazel, the mother I met but never knew. No mother, no more, no time for goodbyes, just sadness within for what might have been. Belonging where? Caught in an abyss, belonging where? Thousands of children, heartache, despair. Stolen, separated, leaving mothers behind. Lost to our culture, music, dance and art. Lost to ourselves, our families and hearts. As a child wondering, what did I do wrong? Who the hell am I? A feeling so strong. The taunts of a childhood, all a whirl. Half caste, a little black girl. Italiano, Greek, Maori or what? Some of the questions asked a lot. Too black to be white, too white to be black. Caught in the middle, belonging nowhere. In summing up, I would like to add that some people find it hard to believe that the photo of the little brown girl in Stepping Out and Speaking Up on page 119 and on the front cover of my autobiography, Hey Mum, What's a Half Caste, is really me. But I can assure you that I am that little brown girl who matured into this not so brown, yorta Wemba Wemba woman standing before you tonight. Happy 20th anniversary, Rona Tranby Trust, and thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, that's better. Thought I'd be talking to myself there for a minute. I'm glad this podium's short because I'm a North Queensland rainforest Murray and we're all short people. But they say a lot of us got big mouths, so. First of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that I stand on and the elders of this land. Thank you for welcoming me to your country, all the way from Cyclone Territory. And thank you to the Rona Tranby Trust people for bringing this important occasion to life. Wanjirabama, Nayu Kunganji, Yaraba, Nayu Bumba, Kunganji. Yo, Wanjira, hello. I'm a Kunganji woman from Yaraba. My language name, traditional name, is Bunya Bajil, means lovely lady. So I hope I'll be a lovely lady tonight. Yeah, that name was given to me by our late queen of the Kunganji tribe, and she gave me that name when I turned 21. I still am 21. Just kidding. And I'd like to acknowledge also some of my family are here tonight from Yarrabah, but they live in Sydney. So wherever you are, in the crowd here somewhere, make sure that Yarrabah stays in you while you're down here and share some of that stories that you have. I'd like to start off by saying that Blow'em, the story of the Yarrabah brass band. First of all, Blow'em came about, the expression Blow'em in my community is an expression of amazement. So if somebody's done something amazing or out of the ordinary, usually you'll hear someone say, blow 'em, eh? You know, it's sort of like, wow, the wow factor. So appropriately, I thought that this project, the Indigenous story of Indigenous brass bands, had the name Blow 'em, and because it was a story of Indigenous men, Aboriginal men, that blew brass instruments. So couldn't be more appropriate than that. First, and I want to tell you a little bit about how Blow 'em came about. I was contacted by Queensland Performing Arts a while ago, and while I was living in Townsville, and they needed someone to work on a project with Leah Purcell on Black Chicks Talking. So as a curator, they contacted me to be part of that project and to help bring that Black Chicks Talking together as an exhibition. So as we were working on it, it turned out that components of Black Chicks Talking couldn't go ahead. So me being an opportunist, had the opportunity to present another story when QPAC said, well, we've now got this space that we need to fill. Do you know of any stories? And so I was rubbing my hands, and I said, yes, I know the story that you could tell. It's an amazing story, will blow people's minds, and no one's really heard about it. And I said, it's a story of Indigenous brass bands. And so when I mentioned that, the people at QPAC sort of already had this wow factor, because they had never heard of Aboriginal men that blew brass instruments in the early 1900s. And they said, well, how do you know about this? I said, well, I remember hearing the elders talking about these bands. And I remember seeing a photo as a young child of a couple of our grandfathers blowing instruments. And so that kind of stuck in my mind for such a long time that I knew that one day this story will come out. And then it was that time when I was asked for a special story. As this story developed, I did the research for over 12 months, and there was hardly anything there that you could that was in your face kind of stuff to tell you about the history of Indigenous brass bands. So there was a lot of research, a lot of digging around, a lot of phone calls, a lot of talking to elders and stuff. But as it developed, it was almost as if the old people were saying, this story has to be told. It has to come out. So the more and more that I researched it, there was just amazing things that were happening that blew my mind. And I knew that it was part of the elders being there, making things happen. And so when we had received the Rona Tranby Trust Award, for which I'm really grateful for, because it made it possible for us to go and talk to surviving members of the Indigenous brass bands, and to go on the trip to some of those communities. Just to give you an example, we found out that there was a surviving brass band member from Mona Mona. For those who don't know where Mona Mona is, if you know Kuranda, up in North Queensland near Cairns, Mona Mona was one of those communities that was set aside by the early settlers, and it was a community that when you drive there, it's like 2-hour drive by dirt road. So anyway, we, with the money that came from Rona Tranby Trust, we went up to Kuranda, and I said, I don't know how we're going to find this lady. They said she's around, but we don't know where she is or where she's living. So myself and Queensland Performing Arts staff and our Indigenous filmmaker with us that did the documentary, we walked up to this little shop, and Kuranda's a little sort of, touristy town, and there was this old lady sitting outside of the shop with their groceries. And I said to the other ladies with me, I said, I'll go over and ask Auntie over here if she knows Velma Green. So I go over and I said, oh, hello, Auntie, how are you? Introduced myself. She said, hello. I said, we're up here doing a story and I'm looking for a lady called Velma Green. She said, I'm Velma Green and I need a lift to Mona Mona. So we took her out to Mona Mona with the 2 bags of groceries and talked all the way and did the stories and did the filming and stuff. And her story was so amazing. I cried during the interview because one of the most striking things that she said to me, because she was only 2 women were part of the Mona Mona brass band, but they also blew lemon leaves. And so Velma was, she said, being part of the brass band gave you a sense of freedom, because it was almost as if it was one of those certificates that you needed to get out of community, exemption ticket. And she said if you wanted to get out of community, you had to be part of the brass band, but only special people could get in if they were able to play. And then she went on to say, she said when we went on our first tour, she said I had never seen the ocean before. And she said just saw this old field of grass, because where Mona Mona is, it's surrounded by mountains. She said, I didn't know what was over that mountain. She said, but I knew that once I got over that mountain, being part of the brass band, I would see the ocean for the first time. So in that, there was this sort of joy but also anguish of being part of a system where the elders, the older people had to survive in. So hearing those words where she said, I'd never seen the ocean before, but when I saw the field of green grass, she said it made me look and made me feel like I was part of the ocean and never been part of the ocean before. And then we heard all these other stories from Velma, that she played the guitar and she played the bass, and she was like 60, 70 years old. And I'm thinking, the talent that comes from North Queensland. But Velma's still around to tell the story, and she was very grateful to be part of the documentary. And as I said, there's a lot of things that happen, and it was part of something spiritual that was happening to say this story has to be told. And just another story of amazement. We had pulled up into Townsville Airport because we were about to fly to Palm Island and interview two of the surviving members from Palm Island, and a male and a female. And so we rang Palm Island Council, and they said, oh, we don't know where these two people are. They're supposed to be here in Palm Island. They know yous are coming. And so our plane got delayed. The sky went black, and we were sitting at Townsville Airport waiting for the storm to go so we could fly over to Palm Island. So I said to the ladies, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to sit here for a couple of hours now, and hopefully we'll find the auntie and the uncle. So we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden we hear this really loud noise of an old car coming around the corner. And so car comes around, hear the door slam, and then in comes these two people that we were going to Palm Island for. It turned out they were couples and they couldn't get to Palm Island, but they knew we were coming, but they were trying to get away from us because they were camera shy. So they ended up at Townsville Airport, so we chucked them in the car with us and did the interview at one of the ladies' place who lived there in Townsville. So that's just some of the things that happened in developing the brass band story. And if I told you all the others, you could probably, I could probably write a book about this and of the amazing things that happened. Out of the documentary with the Rona Tranby Trust help and support, we were able to do the documentary. We were able to do the exhibition of the Indigenous brass bands, and we not only talked about Yarrabah brass band, but we found that there were 9 Indigenous brass bands altogether, and most of them came from North Queensland and 1 in Western Australia. And we also found that, interestingly, the bands that were in New South Wales, there wasn't really a brass band, but you guys down here at a band that played gum leaves, and they walked across the Sydney Harbour Bridge playing the gum leaves. So there's some really amazing stuff out there. So we had the documentary, we had the exhibition which toured various places in North Queensland, and went as far as Weipa, and in Brisbane as well, and out west, and to Townsville, and as well as some small towns along the way. The other thing that came out of that was possible because of the documentary and the oral histories was that we were able to write a play for Queensland Arts Council, who commissioned me to write a play about the Yarrabah brass band story. So the play was cutting edge. It ended up touring Queensland schools for 4 years, and they had never had a play before that toured that long, and nonetheless by an Indigenous person. So that was just another milestone in the possibilities that came out of documentaries, out of oral histories. And the importance of that is in oral histories is that it's used as a tool for many things, for educating people. It can be used to regenerate families, belief systems, and also recover truth. And that's what came out of all of that. And I'd like to pay respects for some of those elders who have since passed on that we interviewed. 3 of those passed away, 2 last year within weeks of each other, and another one a couple of years after we did the documentary. And interviewing those old fellas and those aunties was just a privilege for me. It was an amazing educational tool for me, hearing from our elders. And I came away satisfied because when we finally did the play, we had an opening of the play in Yarrabah. We took it to Yarrabah, the first one. And we had it for over 2 nights, and it was packed house. There was no room. But one of the things that will forever be in my mind is the words of my grandfather, Henry 4 Mile, who was part of the brass band, Yarrabah brass band. He got up there at the end of the show, and he looked at me and with tears in his eyes, and he said, "You've written this and done this, and it's exactly how it happened." And so to me, that was such a that was treasure to me. That meant more, hearing from my grandfather saying, giving me the tick and saying, "What I seen tonight, it's all true, that's what happened." So I'd like to thank you to the Rona Tranby Trust people and the committee and the board, because your work and your contribution to oral histories is such an important role that without that documentary, without your support, none of this would be possible. I'd like to acknowledge Queensland Performing Arts, Queensland Arts Council, and a lady who couldn't make it tonight, who was supposed to be here, Beryl Davis, who was the project officer at the time. She had a passion for getting Indigenous stories out. She was non-Indigenous, but I'd like to thank her for what the support that she gave. Where to from here with Blow'em? Blow'em's like one of those projects that's got a life of its own. You never know what's going to happen next with it. So we've already had calls over the last 12 months. I have had calls about turning it into a feature film, which I would love for that to happen. So any money people out there, this would be a dream come true, because it would be something that everybody would get to see. So once again, thank you to Rona Tranby Trust organisation, and thank you for the stories tonight. And as I was listening to the going through the tour today, one thing that really was highlighted to me and occurred to me tonight was that knowing my story and my people's story and hearing about your story, one thing stands out the most is that we are both survivors. And let us continue that partnership for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie and Lorraine and Verena. That was a blowing good story. Now, Nadina Dixon. Nadina is a Wiradjuri Yunan Durag woman. Anyhow, her mother, Rhonda Dixon, is also a strong jazz and blues singer, and her father, Buddy Grosvenor, is apparently a brilliant guitarist. Nadine is the eldest granddaughter of the late Indigenous activist Uncle Charles Chicka Dixon, who was integral in helping establish the 1967 referendum allowing Indigenous people of Australia the vote, and the Redfern Aboriginal Legal Services, amongst other trailblazing achievements. Now, Nadine is going to perform for you, and I'm very happy to introduce Nadina Dixon.
Wrote this when I was creating songs for Department of Education and Early Childhood, and but I think it's got a strong message, and the message in this song is about our connectedness to each other, to the environment, to Mother Earth, and to the animals. So I hope you enjoy it. It's called I'm an Eagle, and it talks about the spirit. Oh, I am an eagle flying high, spread my wings am a dolphin swimming free. Swimming, swimming in the sea. I'm a tree growing so high, growing, growing up to the sky. Oh, I'm an eagle flying high. Spread my wings and fly, fly, fly. Oh, I am a dolphin swimming free. Swimming, swimming in the sea. Oh, I am a tree growing so high, growing, growing up to the sky. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Nadina. The Honourable Victor Dominello MP was sworn in as the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and the Minister for Citizenships and Communities, which includes the Veterans Affairs, Volunteering and Youth Portfolios, and covers Community Relations Commission on the 3rd of April 2011. Now that's a lot to do. In fact, I was sitting next to the Minister's former legal partner at an estate planning function a few weeks ago, Paul Etherington, and he said to me, well, that's nothing. He's a doer. He can do things. He can get through things. He does things. And that's pretty good, because if he's a doer, he's going to have to be a doer here, because this is a very hard portfolio with all those things to do. But when I asked his staff to give me a little bit of a human element to this whole thing today, I had this given to me, that it's just been a sheer vertical learning experience to the Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the Minister to address you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me begin also by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this beautiful land of ours, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. Linda Burney, the Honourable Linda Burney, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Walter Cord, MLC, to many distinguished guests here, but I can just name but a few. There's Vic Aladef, there's Miller, Norman Seligman, Pastor Ray. Where are you, Pastor Ray? I know he's around, he's probably in the other chamber. And of course the beautiful Lola, and many other honoured guests here. Thank you for having me. It is an honour to speak at the 20th anniversary of the Rona Tranby Trust, looking back at the appalling treatment of Aboriginal people in Australia. We can easily draw parallels between their history and the history of the Jewish people. The late Thomas Paul Rona and Eva Rona, who set up the Trust for Tranby, could see that the Aboriginal and Jewish peoples share similar histories. Both have suffered persecution, both have suffered dispossession of lands, and both have suffered sheer mass murder, including in the Jewish case, the unimaginable horror of the Holocaust, both of which Thomas Rona and Eva Rona survived. Indeed, I hold the firm view that both the Aboriginal people and the Jewish people know a great deal about survival and resilience. To achieve them, a people need pride in their culture, an understanding and appreciation of their history, and just as important, a compassion and care for those less fortunate in one's own and other communities. This is a compassion that I believe that the Aboriginal and Jewish communities have embedded in their psyche, a compassion that now the broader community is the welcome recipient of. Yesterday, I know that my good and esteemed friend Vic Aladef from the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies was on radio, and he made a comment that I think is very fitting. Vic said, and I quote, "Memory is an important way in which Jewish people approach social justice." And I know that when I travel around New South Wales and I sit and I talk with people, Aboriginal people, and they tell their stories, it is a major part of the healing and reconciliation process. I imagine that the late Thomas and Eva Rona were people who had a heartfelt understanding of these commonalities between Aboriginal people and the Jewish people. Thomas and Eva Rona directed a specific proportion of their estate to be held for the benefit of the Tranby College or the Aboriginal Legal Service, according to the discretion of the trustees of the estate. And the trustees, in their wisdom, established the Rona Tranby Award and Collection, which is now run collaboratively by the Tranby College and the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies to support the recording and preservation of Aboriginal oral history. And when I was looking at the brochure that was given today, I was particularly inspired by the words on the inside cover that said that each award plants a seed that continues to grow over the years. And I think that is a beautiful and an accurate reflection of really what this does. I'd like to conclude, if you can indulge me, by reflecting on the address by Debbie Evans earlier on this evening, a very moving address, if you don't mind me saying so, Debbie, and an address that made me start to think about my own background. And you detail very powerfully how important the oral histories, the history of your grandfather was to you. And I'm thinking, I am now 40 plus GST, and so much of who I am is really an amalgam of the stories that my grandfather and grandmother told me, the stories that my mother and father told me, my uncles and aunts told me. Who I am and where I want to go in my life is really embedded in me through the stories of my elders and who I respect so deeply. So I can see how important this is. The recording of oral history for the Aboriginal people is so important to the Aboriginal community. And particularly, let's think about it, particularly for the stolen generation. I can't begin to imagine a life where I did not have those stories told to me. So it is a real seed of vision and inspiration that 20 years ago somebody had the wisdom, the infinite wisdom, to make a difference, not just to the lives of Debbie, but to the lives of the generations that will come. This trust will be a very, very powerful platform for future generations to understand and know their history, which is so critical to a pathway for reconciliation and in many ways a pathway to truly closing the gap. So let me end by thanking the Rona Tranby Trust. So on behalf of the O'Farrell government, congratulations on your 20 years, your 20 very successful years. And I thank you for all your inspired work that you have done and that you will continue to do for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Great endorsement to have from the government. Great endorsement. We'll come to you. We'll come up. It gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, now to introduce to you a member of the board of the Sydney Jewish Museum, Margaret Goodman. Margaret was the CEO when we established the Rona Tranby Trust and played a major role in assisting us in this project. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret Goodman.
I think it's extremely appropriate that we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of this oral history project in this Sydney Jewish Museum, because we share a strong respect for memory. It's not just respect, but it's an obligation to collect memories, to preserve them, to learn from them, and so teach future generations. Jewish Holocaust survivors and Indigenous Australians share this mission and the obligation to learn from the past to make better tomorrows. And what wonderful stories, just a little that we've managed to hear tonight, that you realise what has been collected, what has been saved, and what would have been lost. So for me personally, having been involved with this, it seems remarkable that 20 years have passed. It's just wonderful to see that it's a project that lives, thrives, and I'm sure that it's got a wonderful future. And particularly if you heard Roland's little message about supporting the trust, because after all, the funds are the basis of it. Do help, because it is really, it's an extraordinary thing and it's a perishable commodity. So we have to catch these stories while the people that have the memories are still here with us. Mention was made of William Cooper. William Cooper was an extraordinarily courageous man who decided to make a protest about the Nazi treatment of Jews in 1938 in Germany in a persecution called Kristallnacht. And just to mention that in November in this museum we will erect a panel which gives the history of what he did, because it belongs here and it's something that needs to be remembered. So I look forward to everybody coming again and having a look at that particular exhibition on which we're working now. So my job is actually to say a very warm thank you to everybody who's been involved in tonight, and it's really been a very memorable and special evening. On behalf particularly of Norman Seligman, our CEO, myself, and our partners in tonight's event, the Jewish Board of Deputies, Yair Miller, the President of the Board, Vic Haladeff, the CEO, our honoured Minister, thank you for coming, Linda and Walt, very honoured guests, thank you for coming. To our excellent musicians, dancers, to everybody who helped to make tonight such a success, and especially to Jenny Simons, to Vivian Seltzer, to Lauren Kavanagh, to Yadel Nathan, and to everybody who I'm not able to mention, but thank you very much. Now it is 8:30. This museum is going to close at 9 o'clock. You're very welcome to stay, to socialise, to look around until 9 o'clock bell rings. And then I wish you safe journeys home. Until we meet again, good night.
Just one more piece of housekeeping that we're going to do. We're going to give this book that was produced by the Board of Deputies, Hand in Hand, Jewish and Indigenous People Working Together, to people that have played a major role here. And we're going to ask speakers, performers, award recipients and their families to stay behind for some photographs. And ladies and gentlemen, just before you go, Jenny, could you just come back here for a second? Just give those books to Yair And we would like to give you a little gift to thank you for everything that you've done. Now you can continue handing out the books. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. If we don't have your email address, please get in touch with us. We'd love to be able to communicate with you. ronatranby.org.au. As Margaret said, drive carefully home. See you next time. Good night.